All right, today we're going to dive into a really powerful and pretty controversial story from the Gospel of John, chapter 5. It's all about a dramatic healing, but the real action, the real drama, comes from the confrontation that happens right after. So let's get straight into it. So it all kicks off right here. A simple command from Jesus, a truly miraculous result, and one very inconvenient fact. It all went down on the Sabbath. And that one little detail, it sets the stage for this massive conflict about rules, about religion, and ultimately about who's really in charge. So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the main theme, which is Jesus' authority. Then, we're going to walk through the story scene by scene, from this world of absolute need to the controversial healing itself, and we'll see how this one event just draws a clear line in the sand.
Okay, so this first section gets right to the heart of the matter. You see, the entire 5th chapter of John isn't just about a cool miracle. It's a declaration. It's all about who Jesus is and the kind of authority he has. Here's the big idea, the main takeaway. These events are all designed to show that Jesus' authority is equal to God the Father's. The story demonstrates that he has life in himself and that he has authority over every single part of our world. And here's the thing. Jesus doesn't just teach this, he shows it. First, by healing the man, he proves he has power over the physical body, over sickness itself. Then, by doing it on the Sabbath, he claims authority over religious law. It's this pattern of acting first, then teaching. Let's see how it all unfolds. Okay, scene 1. We're at a place in Jerusalem called the Pool of Bethesda. And the picture the Gospel of John paints for us here is one of deep, profound, and just desperate human suffering. There's a great multitude of people there, and each one of them kind of represents a different part of our spiritual condition without God. You have the blind, who can't see the truth, the lame, who can't walk on the right path, and the withered, who are just paralyzed by their condition. It's this incredibly vivid metaphor for a world that is in desperate, desperate need. The feeling here is just one of complete hopelessness. It's captured perfectly by this verse in the Psalms. These people are just stuck, sinking in the mud with nobody to pull them out. They are literally drowning in their pain. And what's so fascinating is where these people were putting all their hope. They were waiting for the troubling of the water because they believed an angel would come down and stir it up and the first person in would be healed. So their faith wasn't in God. It was in a superstition, a kind of worldly phenomenon. They were looking everywhere for a savior, except to the one who was literally standing right there among them. And that brings us to scene 2. Into this world of desperate, misplaced hope, Jesus enters. And he doesn't wait to be asked for help. He just steps in and acts. Jesus singles out one man. And to really feel the weight of this miracle, you have to let this number sink in. 38 years. For nearly 4 decades, this man has been unable to walk. His condition, his sickness, has become his entire identity. Jesus' compassion is just so clear here. He already knew the man's story, he saw his hopeless situation, he understood it, and he approached him first. This really shows him as the one who initiates, who reaches out to us in our need before we can even think to reach for him. And here it is. Here's the sinister problem right at the core of the story. Jesus tells the man to pick up his bed and walk. Now that act, healing and carrying his mat, was a direct, intentional violation of the super strict Sabbath laws that the religious leaders had put in place. This wasn't an accident, it was a deliberate challenge. So what do you think happens next? Scene 3, the inevitable confrontation. The newly healed man, carrying his bed as this amazing testimony to the miracle he just experienced, runs smack into the religious authorities. Just stop and think about this for a second. A man who has been a complete invalid for almost 40 years is suddenly up and walking around. What is the very first thing the religious leaders notice? What is their immediate concern? Their concern wasn't for the man, it was for the rule. Jesus' focus was on ending 38 years of human suffering. The religionists' focus? It was on a broken ceremonial law. They saw a violation, not a victory. And this just perfectly highlights that classic conflict between having a living relationship with God versus a dead, legalistic religion. Now, in scene 4, we see that Jesus' interaction with this man is not over. He actually seeks him out later in the temple. This is so important because it shows that his care doesn't just end with a physical healing.
It extends to the man's spiritual future. And he gives him 4 really clear responsibilities, which honestly stand as great instructions for any new believer. First, worship God. And the man was already in the temple doing that. Second, remember your salvation. Never forget what you were saved from. Third, sin no more, which is a warning that continuing in sin could lead to something even worse. And finally, fear the judgment, to understand the serious consequences of turning your back on God. And this brings us to the final scene. The healed man, probably thinking he's bringing them the best news ever, goes back to the religious leaders. And this is where the lines are drawn, once and for all.
I mean, you can imagine what this guy was thinking, right? He's been miraculously healed. Surely, he must have thought, these leaders, these men of God, they'll want to meet the person who did this. He tells them it was Jesus, not to get him in trouble, but probably just out of genuine, pure excitement.
But their reaction is the absolute opposite. This verse right here marks the climax of the whole conflict. See, it's not just about the Sabbath anymore. By claiming God as his Father, Jesus was claiming to be equal with God. And to them, that was blasphemy. And the desire to just persecute him suddenly escalated to a desire to kill him.
And so we end with this question. The religious leaders, they were defending their traditions, their power, their sense of security. But in doing that, they completely missed the work of God happening right in front of their eyes. This story pushes us to ask ourselves, when our own rules, our own traditions, or our own sense of order clashes with an act of genuine love and compassion, what are we really choosing to protect? It's a question that is just as challenging today as it was 2,000 years ago.